Okay, so I wanted to give everybody a brief primer in creating test questions. On the next class session, we're going to have time in groups devoted towards reviewing the questions you have created. So I wanted to spend some time just giving you a little bit of an idea of how to go about creating these questions. So general considerations is when you're creating your test question, make sure the objective that you have for that question is learning and not grades. We want each question to be a learning experience for your fellow students taking the question and the exam, and we're not as much interested in trying to create difficult questions just to be difficult or tricky questions just to try to create grade distribution. We want this to be a learning exercise. We want everybody to mix it up. And so within your groups, please decide ahead of time some way to distribute the content. So for the first half of the semester, for which the questions are going to be created now, make sure you're each sort of taking one didactic and making that the primary anchor of the question, and so we have different content. We're going to go over different cognitive levels and question types, but we also want those to be some distribution within each group. So not every question is a true-false question from each group. There's going to be some variation. Try to test objective knowledge. We're asking you only to use multiple choice, true, false, or matching style questions, which lend themselves more to objective knowledge rather than subjective, which is more essay and fill-in short answer questions. So try to make it objective facts. And keep in mind that this is an at-home open book test. So when you're creating their questions, here's a workflow. I'm going to come back to this slide at the end, but here's how I suggest considering. So first decide amongst your groups, then yourself, what content you're going to be drawing from for your question, which didactic, which subtopic. Decide which cognitive level, we're going to go over that in a minute, your question will be at. And then write a learning objective for your question. This can help you mentally conceive of what the purpose of your question. So, for example, in my question, I want the test taker to apply the online open envelope power sample size calculator for a binary outcome to calculate the number of sample size for 3 different values and compare them. Just one example, but come up with something that has an objective that you want to achieve. Then choose which type of question will be, true or false, multiple choice, or matching. From these first several steps, then you can construct the question stem that fits within each of these pieces. Once you have your stem, then you write your correct answer and its accompanying explanation. And then you can write the wrong answers and their explanations. And then finally kind of go back and review for technical quality. So let's review the 7 areas of technical quality. I'm going to skip number 5. That's why it's grayed out. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with us. Number 1 is going to be cognitive complexity. So each question that you create can be at a different level of cognitive complexity. And with the lower cognitive complexity, such as knowledge, these are easier to write, but they are less complex, less interesting, less opportunity for demonstrating learning or mastery of the subject. But knowledge is easiest, sort of recognizing or recalling information, facts, names, dates, places. Comprehension, so this is where you understand the meaning of the information by restating it, by interpreting it in another way, or summarizing it, which can be done in multiple choice. Application, so this is where you take the information or the data or the concepts in class and use to solve a problem or use in a new situation to come up with an answer. Analysis, now you're looking at either a case study in having to identify and extract the components. So if you copied a method section or an abstract, or found a case study that you wanted to incorporate and have students, your fellow students, identify components in there, that would be analysis. Synthesis and evaluation, these are really more for longer form questions, essays, and open. If you can come up with something, that's great, but I anticipate sort of the first four will be where we'll be spending most of the time. Next piece of technical quality is the content. So questions should be important, and challenging concepts in the class. So just choosing easy, low-hanging fruit is not the total concept here, but we want things that you found important in class, either concepts that were helpful to you or that you didn't know before or that you think are important going forward. Those are the things that we want to be testing, what you find important. And then I think, or I hope, that in class, either explicitly the number of words or slides we devote to this subject, or implicitly, Greg or I said it was an important topic. Those are things that should be popping up on the test and in your questions. If they came up in Q&A sessions or on the discussion board, things like that. Avoid trying to select content that's sort of obscure facts that could be used as a surrogate for difficulty. We want to stray away from that, and avoid content that's trying to trick your fellow students. Want this to be meaningful, so think about, when you think the question, think about your fellow student answering the question and whether they will find that in answering that question, it's a useful learning exercise. So the question itself becomes a meaningful exercise. So again, knowledge questions that can just be answered up by looking a single correct word on a single slide, it's not really a learning value to your fellow student, unless you really think that was a concept that is really important for memorization or review, to have in sort of the recall memory. That's okay. But questions that require several concepts that might take review of multiple slides or even multiple different didactics to sort of pull together, those might be more interesting and meaningful exercises in an open book format. And again, higher cognitive complexity increases the mastery of the subject. The next piece of technical quality is language appropriateness. Some of these are common sense, some maybe not, but please make sure your questions are in good spelling and grammar. The question stems are in complete statements, so avoid incomplete question stems, incomplete statements in the stem that are followed by a colon and need to be filled in by the answer choices. So it's better to have complete sentences and complete statements in your question stem that's more clear. Reflect language that was used in class, or the way language was used in class. We all know that many words can have many different meanings, so try to apply the meaning that was used in class and stick to that. A little bit of word economy, try to minimize non-functional words. Any way you can reduce the content of the question stem to take out anything that really doesn't help with answering the question or the objective that you have for your learning piece. Minimize extraneous clues, especially in the answer choices in multiple choice. So correct answers shouldn't be the ones that are the longest or the most technically complicated, have the most scientific words, or sometimes you can have a unique syntax. Try to eliminate in the language the propensity to easily guess the right answer. And then make sure they're clear. This mostly applies to using negative stems or answer choices. So if your question is, which one of the following is not part of XYZ, make sure you capitalize the word not or any similar word, or always or never. Those kind of qualifying words that if you skip over the word, you'll miss the whole thing. Make sure that those are clearly capitalized so we're not tricking your fellow students. Fairness. This is a pretty easy piece of technical quality. Make sure that you're testing knowledge covered in class, and that and this also makes sure you're fair to your fellow students in the sense that you provide a good explanation of what was correct and what was incorrect, so that when they go back to review the exam, they have an idea of what you meant in the correct and incorrect answers. So it's part of being fair, giving a thorough explanation. So reliability of the question. Again, this is trying to increase the amount of chance and probability that a well-prepared student will actually get it right. An ill-prepared student will more likely get it wrong. So you don't want them to be too easily guessed. Again, avoid using absolutes like always or never to disqualify incorrect choices. Creating two answer choices that are exact opposites sometimes is a way to minimize a 5-answer multiple choice to a 2-answer one. There should be at least 4 or more answer choices in a multiple choice, and drawing the incorrect answers from material that has nothing to do with the class and therefore is obviously incorrect. So making sure all the answer choices were conceivably inside the class. So back to this workflow, hopefully this makes a little more sense. So again, first decide on your content within your groups so it's well distributed, then individually. And again, your content of your question can span multiple different didactics, but try to anchor it in one so we kind of get that distribution. Decide what cognitive level that topic really lends itself to. Different topics lend themselves to knowledge or application, and try to write to the highest level if possible. And then write a learning objective for your question. So what do you want the students to learn in answering your question? Choose the type and then write your SEM. Write a nice, correct, fair answer and fair explanation. Write wrong answers that should be challenging distractors, not easily guessed, and with fair explanations. And then again, review for the technical quality, some of the other language appropriateness and clarity things that we talked about. And you should be all set. You know where to reach me for questions.